Good evening, Somers, and welcome to our regular meeting of January 10th, 2019. And if you would please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I notice we have some scouts here from Troop 228, is it? Yes. If you'd please come up front and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flags up front, boys.
You go. Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scouts. Be seated.
Thank you, Scouts.
So the Scouts are here, just so everybody knows. We usually don't have this many at a meeting, but the Scouts are here today or tonight because they are all going for the Communications Merit Badge, which is a Eagle required merit badge, and one of the requirements you have to have is you attend some sort of a government meeting or some sort of meeting like that. So they had the first or second session just this past Monday, and they were told about different meetings that they can go to, and they chose this one, which is a good one for you boys to come to, because we're going to start with some interesting information on NYSEG, the electric provider in our town, electricity provider. So it'll be might be a little bit interesting for you and obviously for your parents. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Patty, roll call.
Councilman William G. Faulkner.
Here.
Councilman Richard G. Quincy.
Present.
Councilman Anthony J. Sirico.
Here.
Councilman Thomas A. Garrity Jr.
Here.
Supervisor Rick Morrison.
Present. So I'd like to make a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. If there's anyone here for public comment, now this is an opportunity for any citizen of the town of Somers or elsewhere to come in and address, they would come up to the microphone and address the town board with any concern they may have. And yes, public comment here.
See, look at that.
For example.
Hi, my name is Robert Madigan, and I've appeared before you guys before. Good evening. Recently read about Somers in the New York Times. I thought that was a great article. I like the quotes, and
yeah, it was good.
You know, it's a good thing for our town. My question has to do with, and I guess it's kind of a statement and a question, and it has to do with the proposed academy. I'm back again in front of you guys. I was wondering if you could speak to the assessment of the property as it is today, which is office building, and what it will be or could be in the future when it's a school facility. And specifically, the applicant wants to subdivide the property with the buildings in one portion, and then separate lots, 2 other lots, and then a lot with utilities. What happens to the value, the assessment of those lots? Do they decrease? Do they increase? And if you could speak to that, that would be really helpful.
Well, yeah, I think
it's
Roland, our town
premature.
attorney, could.
That's a good question, but it's premature because the assessor has not yet worked on the matter. She hasn't seen the lease that they've entered into, because the way the property will have to be valued going forward is, since it's no longer going to be owner occupied as it was when IBM owned it, you now have to take the lease and you have to capitalize the net income and arrive at a value, and that's how you get to the assessment. It's probably going to be lower than Class A office space, but I can't tell you yet what it's going to be.
Right.
The land, the excess land, will be valued as land. It doesn't have any buildings on it. That zoning isn't actually changing, so I don't think the land value, even though it'll now be a separate lot, is going to change at all. But the buildings may change.
Right, and I guess this is just trying to think forward a little. If the applicant should at some time change their profit status to nonprofit, what will happen to the assessment of the property?
The zoning that the town board is considering is for a for-profit use only. So they wouldn't be able to operate on a not-for-profit basis.
So if they change their status in the future, they would not continue to be able to operate in that
Right.
facility?
They would be violating the zoning district, because the zoning is going to be a for-profit secondary school only. That's
Right.
the use that we're putting into the code.
And is there any resource the town would have to address that if it was to happen? If they were to violate the zoning,
you
other
would-
than to sue
They
them?
wouldn't be able to operate.
You would
Yeah.
take away their
Cease operation.
certificate of occupancy.
If that were to happen, they would have to go through the whole process again and reapply for a change of zoning for that particular purpose, so they'd have to start all over again.
Right, is the value, do you know if the value of the new lots, though it's going to decrease, I mean, it still maintains its zoning of R80, I believe?
Yeah, I don't think the land value, just because
No, it's
it's
gonna
now
change.
separately, on a separate lot, that's not going to change. It's the valuation of the buildings where the use is changing. That'll probably mean a different valuation.
But the land is valued unto itself, though, now, if it is to become subdivided.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't expect that will change.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Seeing no one or hearing no one, I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Very briefly, before we move into our town board agenda, at our couple of meetings ago, we had a woman who lived on Brick Hill came in and talked to us about the speeding and dangerous conditions on the road. And we made a commitment at that time to step up enforcement and look at other matters. We have people in Shenorock with that same issue. So our part-time police department has been very busy, and I just thought I'd run down real quickly January summons that were issued. This is on Brick Hill. So there's one for speeding, cell phone use, expired inspection, no insurance, 2 more speeding, 1 passing illegally, unlicensed driver, and someone passing in a no passing zone. That's only the first 10 days of this month.
Whoa.
In Shenorock, failed to maintain lane, failed to yield, speeding, cell phone usage, another cell phone usage, wrong side of roadway, and illegal passing. Now, out here on Route 100, red light at 35 and 100, expired registration, expired inspection, two of those, 2 speeding, failed to turn, in other words, going through a light, uncovered load, no inspection, failed to fix sticker, no inspection, expired inspections, unregistered vehicles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speeding tickets. So just a brief overview. We do take what people say in public comment, where this person brought up issues, these communities brought up issues about unsafe roadways. So we're out there enhancing our code enforcement.
Is this our police department, or is it state as well?
No, yeah, we don't know what the state has done, but this is
Okay, fine,
this is
okay.
what our part-time force has done.
And we notified the public that we were gonna be doing this during that meeting.
Yeah, this is after, hey, we're gonna enhance enforcement on Brick Hill and over in Shenorock, and still you have people not obeying the laws, and they're gonna,
Well, what's funny and what we always know, not so much on Brick Hill, but probably more so in Shenorock, is that, and we always tell them that we have people who come and they complain, rightly so, that people are speeding, they're not stopping at stop signs. But we say when we put the police in there, the people who are doing this are people who live in Shenorock. And that's, 90% of the time, that's what happens when you have the different communities within the town come in. So so hopefully they'll continue to be enforced, and when they come to court, they'll pay their fine and they'll slow down, or they'll get up to date on their registrations and all.
And if you're driving home from tonight's meeting, be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our force is out there.
He's just got a question, but you can't.
Yes.
There's no public comment.
Just for the benefit of the young scouts that are here, the cell phone usage tickets are extremely important. The number of accidents that happened because people are looking down to do text messaging. My son is now 30 years old, and even as an adult, I still yell at him and scream. And but I used to be in charge of the highways and the trucks, and the accidents that were crashing into my state trucks, it was almost all people were looking down doing text messaging.
Mike,
So
if you could
it's
just
dangerous.
give your name and address.
Mike McBride, Heritage Hills. Good enough?
For the record.
That's for us, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our town board agenda, item number 1
Nope.
is presentation. What?
We keep wanting to forget the department reports.
Oh, yeah.
Department report. Yeah,
Let's go back on our agenda to
Patty
number
Calvin.
5, department reports.
the Eddie Calvin report.
I have reports from the town clerk, building inspector, zoning board of appeals, plumbing, Bureau of Fire Prevention, Parks and Recreation, planning and engineering, tax receiver, director, and director of finance.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So I'm going to ask Deputy Supervisor Garrity to give us a little overview of the next presentation, and specifically maybe speak about the creation of the utility task force.
Sure. Thank you. So, as everybody knows, in the last couple of years, we've had a few instances where the town has been without power for lengthy periods of time. We needed to correct that problem. The supervisor decided, why don't we put together what we're calling the NICEAG task force, of which Councilman Clinchy and I are both members. We have 2 other members out here in the board, Chris Zaberto and Mike McBride, who just spoke. But we have others on the board as well, or on the committee. And what we do and what we decided to do is, one of the things that sometimes helps is if you can put a name to a face, or you can form a better relationship with the entity that maybe in the past you've had issues with. And we've done that. We've had 3 or 4, we also have, I want to mention, we have Kim DeLucia here, who comes down and takes the copious notes and puts the minutes together, which I take complete credit for and put out on my own site. So, but they're all from her, not from me. But we formed this task force, and we've had 3 or 4 meetings. We try to meet once every 3 months or so. If we need it a little bit sooner, we do that. At these meetings, we discuss if we've had any issues recently. We started off with the big issues at the first meetings. We got through that. I see County Legislator Kaplowitz here as well, who was a big part of the first meeting and has been very involved in all aspects of any issues, both pro and con, we've had with NICEAG. We thank him for his assistance. But we started off looking at the old storms and the issues that we had. How can we complete them, or how can we correct them? We don't want to keep having the same thing happen over and over. We've had 3 or 4 meetings. In my opinion, the relationship we have with NICEAG has never been better. We've been able to talk to everybody at all levels, but more importantly, we have the people who are here right out on the street, who are in charge of the different programs that they run. Knock on wood, we haven't had the last couple of instances that have hit the town without power have been things that have been totally out of NYSEG's control. They've been cars running in and knocking down poles. So no matter what NYSEG does, they can't stop that. But we've had a good run here without any lengthy outages. Unless, yeah, knock on wood. No,
And let's hope that
I'm
continues.
constantly knocking on wood.
Mike,
But one of those things is that and somebody's going to speak to about it, is some of the infrastructure that they've been improving. Specifically, the supervisor mentioned it last week when we said we were going to have some people come visit us. The reclosures, which I think have made a huge deal in town, because now people at home, your lights will dim and then they'll come back on. That's normally the reclosures in action. And that's what people have been telling me when I say, how has your power been? It's been great. We've had a couple of times when it's dimmed, but it hasn't gone out. And that's exactly what this particular piece of infrastructure is supposed to do. And I'll let the experts speak about it in more detail and explain what it does. But tonight, what we want to do is we've been having these meetings, and yet the supervisor still is getting some calls and what's going on. We wanted to have sort of a community outreach / education presentation. And it's not going to be a long one. We want to hit the high points. We want to tell you what's going on from the source itself. So tonight we have 3 people here. We have Rob McDonough, who is the construction supervisor in the Brewster Division. He is going to be talking about the infrastructure improvements that they've been doing. We have Sam Miller, who is the certified arborist, who handles their vegetation management program, and again will sort of tell you what they can do and can't do with regards to what they're allowed to cut and not cut, because some people say, oh, there's this huge tree and it's dead, but it's across the road, and that's not in their area that they're supposed to do anything with. So they'll explain that in a little bit more detail. And finally we have, it's Aziz, the manager of community outreach and development, and he is sort of our main contact person who Kim and the supervisor will be working with on a more regular basis. So they're going to show a quick presentation, or it's as quick or as long as we want it to be, presentation that's going to explain some things. If people here have questions, that's fine. If people at home have questions, please feel free to send it in to us, and we can get you answers. But Rich, did I cover all the bases?
No, I think very well. The idea was at the beginning that we start a discussion, and I think you're right. During the first couple of meetings, it was a bit adversarial and even sometimes contentious. But the point that we all agreed on is that we serve the same people. NYSEG gets a monopoly, so to speak, from the state to provide electricity here and in many other parts of the state. Obviously, they have a duty to do that as reliably, although it can never be perfect, but as reliably as possible. As time went on, and we want to help NYSEG as NYSEG helps us, it's become, we think, pretty good. And so then you're talking about some real problems and solutions. Getting along is nice, but talk's cheap and action speaks. And so tonight is really about the actions that they've taken, but also to educate, as we on the committee have been educated, what percentage of the outages are from trees falling, and what can they do about that? How many circuits are in town? What happens when one goes out? What occurs? What are these reclosers, and how does it actually prevent further outages? It's that type of basic information that we've acquired that we think it's always better if the public understands what's going on. I think that's when people get most bothered about most things, when they just, something's happening, I don't know why it's happening, somebody do something. So that's what we're trying to clarify tonight. The gentlemen who have come are extremely knowledgeable. As Tom says, they're the people who are doing the real work all the time on the ground. And so we hope it'll be informative. We hope that there will be questions. If there are follow-up questions, as Tom said, please text me right now or send it in, and we'll try to answer them at the next meeting. I'm sure we'll have other meetings when they will be here. And we meet basically bi-monthly. Our committee meets basically bi-monthly. And we really thank NYSEG for the time that they've donated to us, because that is a large part of their day when they come. And I don't know, but I don't think they do that same thing in every town, so we feel very thankful. And Rob actually lives in town, so maybe that's our contact. Maybe that's why we get a little bit. But that's why we're here tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank all of you for coming to participate.
So now you guys have you want to do the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got 2 PowerPoints, right?
Say, Rob, just when you make your comments. Sure. I mean, there's 2 aspects to this. One is disaster recovery, major storms and so on. The other thing is about, frequency of outages and the duration of them, and how you guys are addressing, the improvement in the networks to get us.
And just give your name again, just so they know who's who.
It's easier if I stand up here. I don't want my back to
You just need a
You
mic.
need a microphone.
I don't need a microphone.
Well, you do.
Oh, you do. So for
The whole world is watching, so they need to hear you.
We're going to go out or go down.
And I will do the.
You want to do that?
Sure.
All right.
I got it.
Okay. We'll move out. The official box is in action.
The official.
You can take that mic.
Rob, you can remove the mic as well.
Oh,
Yeah. Just pull it out of that.
you know what? I'll stay here, and Aziz can run that.
That's all right.
So, for the record, Rob McDonough, Somers resident, supervisor of engineering and construction for the Brewster Division, which incorporates Somers. Before we do the presentation, I will do a little bit of background on what we've been doing in the town to improve the infrastructure. As the councilman said, we've been installing reclosing devices. What these devices do are 2 things. One of them is it limits the amount of people that an outage will affect. It doesn't eliminate the outage, but it cuts down the number of customers affected. So the device, if the outage happens here, it might have used to affect 1,000 people. Our goal now is to make outages affect sections of 500. And we have completed those installations in town. But what a reclosing device does is this device senses a fault in the line, a tree branch, a squirrel. It could be really anything, but if a tree branch is sitting on the line, normally we call that a fault. A fault would open up and you would lose power. Now, this device senses the fault, it opens up and closes back in an attempt to clear it. It does this 3 times. If the fault is still there after the 3rd time, then you do remain out of power. But if it's a tree branch that falls, hits the line, and we call it a transient fault, it falls, hits the line, bounces off, and lands on the ground, this device will open, and when it closes back in, if the tree branch is no longer there, you'll remain in power. So people may be experiencing what they consider flickering lights, but that is actually a device that will help you remain in power. So it's one part of the infrastructure that we are improving in town. The other major thing that we are doing is working in the biggest population in Heritage Hills, replacing the aging infrastructure, the wires, and the equipment there. We have a 5-year plan. We've completed the first year about a week behind. I mean, we finished in January, but we finished the 18 plan, and we're going to actually start the 2019 plan. So we've worked with Heritage Management and the board there, and I think for the first year it went pretty well. So we're going to continue that up for the next 5 years. We do have a few more reclosers that will be installed here in 2019. And those are the main infrastructure improvements that we've been doing. Aziz and I are going to go over a little bit of education on how we restore power during a major storm.
Rob, let me interrupt you for
Go
1
ahead,
second, though.
absolutely.
You've indicated, just so everybody knows, that each of these reclosures should handle about 500 customers, and the total build-out is going to be about 19.
Correct.
Which should cover all of the customers in town. So the goal is hopefully a reclosure, at a time, everybody here knows when you call up NYSEG in the past, you get it, there's never only 500, there's always 1,500 or 2,000 or 20, because it's one big circuit that went down. Here, the reclosures will hopefully limit that to maybe 500 maximum at times. Again, when do you expect the last of the 19 to be fully installed?
Our deadline is the end of the first quarter.
Good.
But our most recent outage in town was a a car that took out a pole right outside on 138. That happened, close to our substation, so the reclosers don't really help us. Everybody ends up out of power. But with these devices, we were able to restore power to certain sections much faster.
Which is great, but again, a car hitting a pole, you guys really don't have any control over that.
We've had two recent,
we just had two of them in the last month or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where the traffic enforcement comes in.
Right.
Someone's important.
You're right.
Slow people down, pay attention, no cell phones.
Yep.
So it actually can work together.
Right. Go ahead, Rob, thank you.
So this is just an education. I think we take it for granted that people understand what we are doing when we have to restore power out of a major storm. You only, as a consumer, and I'm a NYSEG customer, I live in town. So you are only expecting just when am I going to get my lights back on. I get it. When everybody's out in town, my wife and family are out, and I'm going out to leave to get everybody else back on. But that's the only part that as a resident sees and a customer, and we understand that. I think we take it for granted at times. So we wanted to go over this, and people understand the steps that we have to take before we could restore power to your individual homes. So, Sam? So you want to take this one, Aziz?
Yep, so it's important to know, and I'll just put it in. It's important to know that...
The TV.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And hold on, let's see if we can get it a little
Fuzzy there.
little less blurry.
Think up on Tom Sam.
You're a tree guy? You don't know how?
Watch out for this.
Oh, look
There
at
it
the
is.
tree guy.
That's it.
Tree
All
guy.
right. New skill for the tree guy.
Right.
Technology.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So it's important to know that NYSEG utilizes the ICS system, the Incident Command System, when we restore power. What's that mean, for us? It basically means that this is a system that's utilized from various federal level governments. You got local, you got state, you got federal, you got non-governmental organizations that use this ICS. The ICS focuses on a couple elements, and you're talking about logistics, you're talking about planning, you're talking about organization, you're talking about response, and you're talking about resources as well. So at the end of the day, it's great to know that not only NYSEG, but also your local municipality government, also the state government, that everyone is communicating the same. Everyone's talking the same knowledge. And that just means more efficiency, more effectiveness when it comes to restoring power. So when we have a storm, a major storm, we can expect to have lots of damage. We can have pole damage. We can have distribution line, transmission line damage. We can have substation damage. We can have wires down. There's going to be tons of damage. So understand that NYSEG's first priority, number one, is going to be safety. That's going to be our number one priority, making sure that not only the public is safe, but also that the employees are safe as well. So we have a responsibility to respond to all the wires down calls. We have a responsibility to respond to all the emergencies that are reported. Oftentimes in the response, it is just to make sure that it's safe first, prior to restoration. So safety always comes first. When we do restore, there's going to be a series of steps that we take when we restore power. Of course, safety. We have, and you've probably seen them during storms, we have a group that's called wire guards. They go out, any wire that is down, they go out and make sure that that particular wire is not going to come in contact with the public at all. In some cases, we could have so much damage that we actually have to shut down the street because we can't just protect that one wire and allow the traffic to go through. We'll have to reroute the traffic. A lot of that takes a lot of cooperation and what we're getting with the town as well. Rob, go ahead. You want to jump in?
So one thing about this that this is definitely something that we have to educate the public about. In a major storm, my first step is to work with the Somers or whatever town it is, but the highway superintendent to get the roads open. We need to make sure first responders can get to places, ambulances, fire trucks, police, and we need to make sure people can drive through the roads. If you're trapped in a road, it causes another level of panic. So we call that make safe. So you may see a NYSEG crew show up on your street and all they do is cut a wire and move on. And the reason they do that is their job is we're in make safe mode. So that could happen for the first 24, 48 hours, depending on the severity of the storm. And, you know, that's an essential part of what we do, working with the town. I mean, I have a great relationship with the highway superintendent here in Somers, many towns. You know, we talk, you need this road open, we're there, working in conjunction. So, you know, sometimes in those first 2 days, a lot of customers are not being restored, and you've seen a nicer truck in the street, but that's the reason.
And during those first 2 days, or that first 24 hours, it's essential to make sure that we have our damage assessors on scene as well, because those damage assessors are going to take stock of how many poles are broken, trees down, wires broken, wires down, whether it's transmission line, whether it's distribution line, and that's going to affect the ETR. So that's the ETR that you see when you go online and you see your estimated time of restore. When is my house going to be back on? When is my neighborhood, you know, power going to be back on? That's all going to be done from the assessment. Initially, whenever we have a storm, if it's projected to be a storm that we've had in the past, similar size, amount of people out, the system puts up an automatic ETR based on the history that we've already collected from the storms. So based on the history, we can say this amount of Somers is out. It typically takes us this amount of time. So here's your ETR. This is your estimated time to restore based on the damage. But as the damage assessors that are out there, boots on the ground, they see what's actually out there, those ETRs can adjust. And that's the reason why you could go online and see, okay, it says my ETR is 10 o'clock. Let's say you go back online and now it says, wait a minute, my ETR is not 10 o'clock now, it's 1 o'clock. There's an example why that ETR has changed, because now the damage assessor has been able to get out there and see, well, you know, this is the damage that's here, and that damage is more than historical.
Is there a hotline that Somers residents can call to get that ETR?
It's going to be the same customer service line. It's going to be that same 1-800, what's the emergency line? 572-1111. So it's going to be the same line for everyone. The way the website is designed, it can get local. It can get down to your street if your street is off. If your address is off, the website will be able to tell you local. Initially, when you go to the website, it's not going to have a Somers tab. It's not going to have a Pound Ridge tab. It's not going to have that, but it's going to be for your account base. If your account, if you're in the system, you know, you can come all the way down to your specific address. And we'll get to this later on, but you can also receive mobile alerts as well in your account. You can have mobile alerts to your phone that your power is off or your power is being restored, ETR as well.
The methodology was in the recent bill.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. If we do have stuff from the audience, you do need to go up to the mic, only because they can't hear you at home. So they'll be answering a question, and people at home have no idea what the question was.
So let's because we have this presentation, just a couple more minutes on here, and then the vegetation one. So if you could jot it down, and then we'll take all the questions after.
That's a good idea.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay.
You want to do this one?
Yep.
So the order in which we restore power, the way the power comes to your house is it's generated at a facility. It's transmitted on our transmission lines that come from all over New York State, Connecticut, Massachusetts. It hits a substation, which drops that voltage down to a lower voltage. It goes on the lines that you see above the road. And then it hits a transformer, which is the can on the pole in front of your house, to another line that drops the voltage down to something you can use.
So, and again, if you could tell the people on the poles, your wires are where?
The wires are the top. It's the top wire. So the way we have to restore is we don't generate. We transmit and we distribute. So we have to restore transmission, because if we restore your wires to your house and the transmission's out, you're still going to be out of power. So we do transmission to the substation, to the distribution, to your service line. So again,
the only reason I asked that question was because I know the supervisor gets calls, we all get calls. You know, a lot of them are gone now, but for quite a while there were some poles that were sort of just hanging there. There were new poles behind them with half a pole hanging in the air in front of them. The reason those were there weren't NYSEG. NYSEG's poles or wires are all the way on top. Those were cable wires, you know, Verizon or something like that, who are much slower in coming to change over their lines versus NYSEG. So, you know, if you see a down wire, unless it's one of the top ones, more than likely it's cable or telephone or something like that.
but still call us. Don't take that on yourself. Don't touch it.
Yeah, don't touch them.
So that's the way we restore power. And then the next guiding principle when we're at the point where we're working the distribution and service lines is we attempt to get critical facilities on first, and then the largest number of customers possible. So if one repair will pick up 500, we're gonna normally do that one first before a repair that's gonna pick up 5 or 10. So, yeah.
And this slide is just to give you an example, you know, what it takes. So here you got 3 to 4 people on average just to set a pole. And it takes about 4 hours to set that pole in this example. So, you know, we've had storms where we've get 50 plus poles that are broken and we have to replace those poles. Then there's certain areas where we have to do dig safe. We have to call in just to have dig safe, just to get permission to dig so that way we can set the pole. So it's not as simple as, you know, the restoration process is a little, you know, it's pretty, it's wide scale. And for us to be able to do it within 24 hours, 48 hours, because we're definitely pushing for that ETR. And like Rob said, we have critical facilities, we have life support customers that we're looking to make sure that they have power as well. So we've got all that working at the same time. And that, again, this slide is just an example of what it takes, you know, when you have a crew of 2 or 3 people to put one pole in the ground.
And to put in perspective, during the tornado storms in May, we had about 750 broken poles. So 3 to 4 hours for 3 to 4 people, at 750 is, and that's just pole work.
So event preparation, if we're getting, this is typically what we do if there's a storm approaching. We're going to monitor the weather, of course. We're going to adjust our plans based on the forecast. We're going to prepare crews. We're going to communicate with the local town administration as well. We also oftentimes, if it's a larger storm and if it didn't catch us off guard, we also distribute press releases as well. So the last couple storms, thankfully, we have been able to get a couple press releases out there, and we've been able to mobilize crews. But keep in mind, there's certain storms, the forecast will come in and say, well, this is going to be, you know, it's just really going to be nothing. And then the next day we wake up, none of us have power, broken poles, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a balancing act sometimes. We would love to be in a position that every time that there's a storm, every time that we get a forecast, we can ramp fully engaged, you know, everyone ramp all the way up and have everyone ready. And then the next day there's no storm, and then you kind of ramp down. So this ramp process is something that we have to make sure that we temper going forward as well with storms.
And one of the things that the supervisor's been able to do, and again, we said this over the last couple meetings, but he's been able to work with you guys to get you a staging area right up here on the old IBM property, which has enabled us, as I was saying, when the car hit the pole the other day, I remember seeing very quickly on social media somebody going, yeah, I just saw a NYSEG truck going by with a pole, you know, half hour, 45 minutes after it happened. If we didn't have a staging area up here, that probably would have taken longer. So the supervisor was able to work with the landlords up there and able to get a staging area, which again will reduce the amount of time things might take.
It's been a tremendous help.
What's the ramp up time? You see storms coming.
He knows it's a mic.
So that's a tough question to answer. I mean, we start looking at forecast 5 days in advance, depending on models of prediction, and you know we use things that predict damage. We could start moving crews depending on how widespread across the state it is. I mean, it's a very complicated. It's not really a cut and dry answer. But we start looking at forecasts 5 days in advance. Internally, phone calls started getting made. Meetings may happen, but it depends on damage prediction and how widespread the storm's going to be, and how accurate. We use multiple weather forecasts. We pay for these people. I've been on these calls, and they give us a confidence level, and that we have to use it. It's one of our tools. So depending on that is another, depending on how long it takes us to ramp up.
And then public awareness and communication. So we're pretty active on Twitter. We have a Twitter page at NYSEG, that's NYSENG. And we're also on Facebook. Customers can go to the website and they can sign up their account for, like I said, those mobile alerts. You can get calls or texts if your address is out of power. ETR information can come to your phone. If you're not home and your address is up, you've been restored, that information comes to your phone as well. So it's pretty interactive, and there's some new things all the time that we're putting up for customers. It's not set up where it could be for, like for instance, we don't have Town of Somers alert, but we are, directly involved with getting information to the elected officials. So if you go online and you set up your specific account, it's only going to be your account. So if you have family members and you want to have multiple accounts, you want to encourage them to set their account up so that way they can get that direct information for their account. And this is important. There's outreach, and I know that each town has their level of interaction, and I believe that this town is pretty interactive when it comes to communicating with their elected officials. If you should see a wire down, some people will call NICEAG, some people may call their local official. It's very, very important. If you're the type that calls the local official, that's excellent, because most of the time they're going to contact us as well. Please make sure that you do call NICEAG, because it's important when it comes to wires down that we start that clock. We have to have a crew out there. We have to have somebody out there immediately for safety. We have to have somebody to respond to those inquiries or those complaints. So I would say call NICEAG for anything to report, but you can, at the same time, you can contact your elected official, and hopefully they will say, yes, they're aware of that, and here's the update on this. So we're trying to make sure that we're interactive with that level of communication.
Aziz or Rob, could you explain how the local ground is electrified when the wires are down?
So I just don't know if the TV is going to pick up that question.
Yeah.
The question is,
Sure, go ahead.
Just repeat it.
the question is how the ground is electrified when the wires are on the ground.
So voltage can carry through the wire into the ground. It could hit a guardrail. It could travel down a metal object for distances where you wouldn't even see the wire down. So during a storm, especially, you ever see a wire down, don't go near it, don't touch it, contact us. I mean, that's the best advice I could give.
Even if you are certain it's a cable line, you don't know if that cable line is leaning up against an electric line as well. So any wire down, any wire, we treat it as live electric. You have to make sure that as long as you think about that, if any wire, live electricity. We've had very bad circumstances where you have wires laying across fencing in people's backyards. We had to remove pets, laying across, like you said, guardrails, and you've got wire guards that go out. Not only do they have to set up to protect the public from the wire, but also the guardrail is a hazardous area as well. So it gets pretty tricky out there when you talk about electricity. So this ends our presentation on how we restore power in the case of emergencies. We're going to go into vegetation management. If you have any questions for this particular one, just kind of jot that down for a moment. Vegetation management, Sam. Yep, I'm sorry.
Actually, I actually can't stay for Sam's presentation, so if anybody has a question about this, please let me know now. If it comes up later, contact the town.
If you have questions, you can contact the supervisor's office, and we'll get questions answered, and maybe put something up on the website if we get a sort of a general question answer.
Well, just one thing I did want to point out, if I may, or I ask you the question. So what interested me when we started our meetings and our conversations is that the feeling was kind of like, man, you guys are, from your side, you're doing great, you can't do better. But as time went on, it became clear that you were going to do better, that you were doing better. You had ideas of how to do better, including, and this is what I would like you to speak to, is the staging of getting people in place when you know a storm is coming, because that was often a criticism. So first, how far away do you get these crews?
So again, I really
could
can't
be out of this country.
So we have taken crews from Canada for sure.
Right. Again,
it's not an easy question to answer depending on where damage is across the state. NICEAG has 13 divisions across the state. We own 3 other utilities: Rochester Gas and Electric, United Illuminating in Connecticut, and Central Maine Power. Those are usually our first resources to bring in mutual aid. if a storm is widespread where we cannot predict which one of those operating companies is going to hit the hardest, that resource does not become available right away. So again, it's not a question you can answer where 3 days before a storm I move people. You know, it's based on algorithms and predictions and so.
Well, obviously it's money. I mean, you bring people, assuming you can bring them, and you bring them ahead of time, it's money, and it is a business.
So it's money and resources. The additional resources that don't come from our operating companies are mutual. So, you know, Central Hudson or Con Ed or Eversource to our neighboring utilities may have these crews, but won't willing to give them up because they don't know if they're going to get hit.
Right. Right.
To move people from Canada, sometimes it's tough to get them across the border. So, you know, that plays into part. You know, if it comes through Central Hudson's territory to our west and they don't get hit, yeah, they're very willing to give those crews up and we grab them and they come. But you know it's a dynamic process that changes depending on.
Well, I
every
think
storm.
my point was, as I heard in the last meeting I think we had, is that NYSEG was trying to be more proactive and not reactive. But obviously there's money. You told us about an incident, I think, up by Liberty, and you brought in all the crews and nothing happened. And that's obviously, it's hard to run a business if you just spend a lot of money.
So I can
Just
tell
us
you
about
that since I've been here recently, we definitely bring in more crews earlier than we used to.
Right, that's my point.
That philosophy in upper management has definitely changed. Again, it's not specific time frame.
Yes. But the philosophy has changed.
The philosophy
that was
has
made clear
changed.
to us. Yes.
Also, what has changed is that we have more permanent contractors on the property. We used to have a very small contingent contractor force here in Brewster on a day-to-day basis. That resource has been upped, so every day they're here. So more people are here doing, you know, these recloser jobs or other infrastructure. Daily they are in the IBM parking lot here, so which is a great resource for Somers. But, you know, so that also philosophy has changed.
And that's what's going to help us, because in the last storm, mutual aid is great unless the storm is incredibly widespread, because you don't get any mutual aid.
That is
I mean,
true.
I remember sitting in the meeting once where we were supposed to get, I can't remember how many crews, and crews that were supposed to come from Long Island were turned around because they got hit just as hard as us. So having more people here on site is still a much better plan than mutual aid when you're having something as widespread as those last two big storms were.
But your CEO has made that commitment to improve and
He
be
has
better.
made that commitment to improve.
And that's the point we're trying to get to in our meetings early on, and we certainly do appreciate that. And the discussions the supervisors had with Carl Taylor personally have been reflected, I think, on the ground. Now, on the other hand, you know, things have been better in the last year. It seems maybe we've just hit a good streak of luck, but maybe it also is better preparation and just trying to improve.
I'm going to give Sam a lot of credit for that, trimming the circuits, but that's his presentation next. So,
Yep.
if anybody has any questions,
Thank you,
everybody
Rob.
knows how to get to me.
Thank
so.
you.
Appreciate it. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
February 5th.
In case you forgot.
Okay, I'm Sam Miller. I'm the forester for NYSEG in the Brewster Division, and while Aziz gets the vegetation one up here, I'm going to talk about actually how vegetation responds during storm, because we're a little bit unique in the fact that Aziz works with both line and vegetation. He works with everyone during a storm. Rob is more line department centric. I'm more vegetation centric. So I'm in charge of the tree crews around, and when we're out on our storm roll, we're out to assist line in the first 24 to 48 hours. That's all you're seeing tree crews doing. And some people might say, hey, I see a bunch of tree crews sitting, but there's like 8 trees down over there. Why don't they go do that? They are not allowed to leave their linemen unless the lineman directs them to. So that's another aspect that sometimes you got to make it's different. You got to make sure the wires are safe and everyone's safe. And that's why you may not see the tree crews working so quickly. However, when we get out ahead of the linemen, that's what helps restore power quicker too. And that's what I'm in charge of, and that's what I send my crews out to do. And sometimes you might see tree crews on your road, but you won't see a lineman for a little bit because we are that far ahead. And just as many line crews that come in, we usually have that, I would say a little less. Say if there's 100 line crews, I'm probably looking at 40 tree crews. And line crews got to spend 3 to 4 gentlemen doing one pole. I can send a 2-man crew and knock out 8 trees very quickly. So that's the little difference of restoration from a vegetation standpoint, as well as I'm going to get into what we do with debris on our normal operating maintenance or schedule. But during storms, we do not pick up any debris at all whatsoever, period end. There is no trees that are cleaned up during that time period, and that's a sensitive issue that I know we do have, and still we will have that when I retire and my child is working. So that's just an issue that we have. But I'll get into it now. I'm going to explain basically the overview of the vegetation program. And as we know, the leading cause of power outages are related to trees. So we try to have a maintenance program, get on a 5-year, which is a 5-year schedule, which we try to get the trees away from the power lines. And as you can see in this picture right here, you have tree before our wonderful arboricultural prunes, and we'll talk about that too later, and then after, and how the tree is definitely more clear away from the power lines, making it more reliable. Good. So as you know, this is our service territories. Our Brewster is that little tiny bit down the end where we live, but that is our whole service territory. So if you were just thinking about what Rob was saying, and Councilman Clinchy, if that kind of gives you the aspect of your question of resources bringing in.
Right.
If we have a whole huge front like we've had the last 2 weeks come through, Brewster didn't get a storm. Every single one of those divisions were in storm mode. We weren't. So sometimes it is, I like to take credit, but sometimes it is just fronts. So those are our many service territories in NYSEG, and you can see us right down there at the bottom. All right, now we're getting into the specifications of tree trimming. Like I said, we are trying to get on a 5-year program. We are at that 5-year schedule where we trim every single line mile in the Brewster division, which is up to Amenia, down to Pound Ridge, over to Yorktown, kind of, and then imagine those 3 points, and then think of New Hampshire. That's our district. So we trim every circuit in our division on a 5-year cycle. In the Somers area, I believe we try, and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me that we share every meeting. I believe you have your circuits are all trimmed in a 3-year period out of that 5 years, correct?
I remember.
Yeah,
I think that's right, Mike?
Think so. So the clearance that we try to get around the power lines, the primary lines at the top of the pole, is 15 feet above those lines, 10 feet to either side of those lines, and 10 feet below the lines. So as you can see the pole there, you have the 3 little dots representing the lines, and that's the area that we want clear. Now if we go 10 feet either side of the lines, that's the trimming that we want away from the trees. And if we go 10 feet either side of the pole, those are the trees that we definitely target for removal and clearing that area out. Anything under less than 6 inches in diameter, which is about yay big, that's considered brush. And when you get into a residential area, if someone came on my property and said, hey, that's a little brush, we're not gonna, that's a tree in my yard. I don't know about everyone else's yard, but that's a tree, so that's a little bit sensitive. One aspect that we do struggle on, not only in Somers, but in every single town, is the removal of wood. So this size and smaller gets chipped up and hauled away during our routine maintenance. When it's bigger than this, the large pieces of wood, big trees that we take down, we cut them into segments, and I know in this presentation it says manageable segments, but what's manageable for me may be different than what's manageable for you, maybe different what's manageable for the scouts. So I don't like using that term manageable. We cut them into pieces ranging from 16 inches to 4 feet. And a big tree is that's not a manageable piece, but that's the specification. So that's what we try to do. On an unmaintained area, that's a wooded area, we actually do not cut them into segments. We do the lop and scatter technique. We cut the tree down, we get the brush down to the ground, no higher than 2 feet, and then sometimes we'll cut up the log, sometimes we won't. In a home maintained area where there's actually landscaping or a roadway, driveway, we do neatly stack that wood and chip up the brush, 6 inches in diameter and less. So, this could have probably came in a little bit earlier when you were asking about how the pole actually looks.
There you go. That's my question. That's right.
So, at the top of the pole, you have your primary lines. And as Rob was saying, then it gets stepped down. There's a little wire that connects to that metal tin, which is called a transformer. Then that power gets stepped down and put into a service line or secondary line. Those are the lines that feed your home or feed multiple homes. It's the voltage is stepped down, because if you had the voltage going right from the primary into your home, every appliance would blow up. So that's why we do that. And then this is another common thing that we have questions about: the phone and cable lines. We do not trim for the phone and cable lines really ever. The only time we do is when we're doing our routine maintenance, and that phone and cable line is within that 10-foot realm. And usually right at 10 feet is where the phone and cable lines start. They may be a little bit low, they may be a little bit high. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I still get questions. In fact, today I got 2 inquiries. Tree online, got to come out. Oh my goodness, it's pulling the line down. It was a phone line. So I say you have to call the phone company. I cannot speak for the phone company. We're a little bit more proactive about getting trees off the line than other agencies. I'll just leave it at that. But we also have a dedicated vegetation program, and I can't speak for them. So that's why you may still see some trees on phone and cable lines from past storms. Okay, I kind of touched on this already. These pictures actually speak 1,000 words. Every single one of these pictures is from my division. So every single one of these trees would be actually a great candidate for removal, because every single one is within 10 feet of that line. If the tree is within 10 feet of the line, I am asking our contractors, which currently is Nelson Tree Service, to be aggressive in asking for removal. And the reason for that is you can see the height of the lines in the picture to the left. You see the height of the lines and then the height of the tree. The tree is a good 25 feet above that line, and just trimming one side, it may mitigate the issue for a little bit, but guess what's going to happen? The tree's going to grow. It's going to grow right back into that line. Because of the proximity it's to the line, that would be something I would want to remove.
So Sam, this might be a good time to just interject the issue of blue sky technique that's used over in Connecticut. I mean, you trim your 10 by 15 by 10, but then you could have a limb 20 feet, 25 feet in the air that could snap off and come down and take your line out. But if you would just want to, because I understand that a request has been made to the Public Service Commission to allow that technique to be practiced here in New York.
I can't speak to that at all. I am unaware of
we had a meeting.
That program going into fruition. I know other companies do use that program called ground to sky technique, or enhanced trimming is another term. I know there has been discussions, but as far as implementation, I wouldn't have any idea.
No, and they're saying it's going to be a while before it is implemented. It's got to go through the whole process.
So what ground sky technique, Supervisor, is from the ground to the heavens, anything within that 10-foot realm, gone. Just taken out. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that would be that technique that has been used to reclaim right-of-ways. Right-of-way is the distance or the area where the utility line is. We then get into a little bit of, what does the utility have a right and easement to do and what they can and cannot do. but that's could be another 8-hour conversation that we don't need to jump into right now, but we will touch on that a little bit later.
But that would, I mean, we've had discussions about that. It would seem, I mean, it is in Connecticut. It is, I'm told, as mentioned, a proposal in New York through the Public Service Commission through Albany that would mitigate some of the times when power goes out because the limbs might be so high that you can't get at them. But with this, you could. Is that something that you think would be a favorable thing? If it was simply, let's keep the power more reliable. Obviously, there's aesthetic questions, there's people who won't like it, but just from the point of view of keeping the power going, in your opinion, would that be an improvement?
That's a very pointed question.
Yeah, well,
that's fine. That's why I'm here.
This technique is going to make Sam's job twice as hard.
Okay, well, let me say this. Let me answer it this way. Prior to the ground sky technique, and there's pros and cons of every technique. Some people like using helicopter trimmers. I can go off on that too. But anyway, I digress. The reason we chose 15 feet, and that's an acceptable practice that has been approved by the Public Service Commission, is hinge. Basically, breaking hinging of upper limbs. If you get that 15 feet of clearance, we're hoping, and normally it is the case, that if you have a branch higher than 15 feet above the line and it breaks, it will hinge and miss, come down and miss.
Okay.
So it's like if you have the lines here, I'll do it for everyone here.
I never heard that.
Yeah, up here, it's called a hinge technique. If that line breaks here, it misses. But if that tree is much closer, to your point, if that's within 10 feet and it breaks down and hinges, well, if it's this close, it's going to hit the wire. Let me get back to these pictures and we can go back to it.
What I'm going to say is we're going to hold the questions because this is what happens in our meetings too. Yeah. The vegetation discussion goes on forever. Everybody's got ideas and all that. So we'll go through the presentation and see if there's some questions afterwards.
So these are 3 different techniques of trimming, which we're about to get into. As you see on the other right, that is a top cut. We top the main stem of that tree, and it's directly underneath the lines. And then I used to work out west, and they had a button that said, "Ask me why," with a tree as a Y. It's called directional pruning, and we're trying to direct that growth away from the lines while maintaining that tree. Those 3 trees are actually in a village, not in Somers, but in a different village in my area that is right downtown, and they did not want to lose those trees. So that was the only thing we could do since they're directly underneath the lines. So the vegetation maintenance pruning specifications, a little bit continued here. We do support the right tree, right place philosophy. That means that we don't want trees underneath the power lines or in the right of way. Contrary to a lot of people's belief, I love trees. I went to the University of Vermont. I enjoyed my time there hiking through the woods and skiing and just enjoying the outdoors. That's one reason why I went to the University of Vermont. And I love the outdoors just like a lot of other people, and I do love the benefit of trees. However, trees and power lines don't mix. And the right tree under a power line is a tree that can't grow any taller than 20 feet. Any tree that grows taller than 20 feet shouldn't be underneath the power line. Shouldn't be within 20 feet of a power line. That's my opinion. Some people get a little closer. I don't like trees within 20 feet. But as you can see on our diagram on the lower portion here, if you get a smaller tree variety and then you move out a little bit further away, you get the medium-sized variety that can be 40 feet, 50 feet at maturity. And then you get a little bit further out. That's where you can get your beautiful trees like the oaks we have, the tulip poplars that we have, some of the sugar maples that are still very big and large and gorgeous down here as well. The further away you get from the power lines, the better a chance you have of a tree coming to its full life cycle, if you will. The closer you get to it, we're really aiming to get that away. So that's what we do donate to the New York State Forestry Council, Urban Forestry Council, excuse me, and we try to share that philosophy. And Cornell Extension has that same philosophy. Many other utilities have that same philosophy as well. You know, if we put the right trees in the right place or the right vegetation in the right place, we're not going to have these issues. Yeah, I'm good with that. And here are some of the techniques, pruning techniques that you will see in your neighborhoods. And this is probably what I get the most calls about. My tree doesn't look like a tree anymore. My favorite, you butchered my tree. Unfortunately, trees don't grow meat, so we can't butcher it, really. But I can't say that. Anyway, these are the techniques we have where the tree is located near the lines. When a tree is directly underneath the power lines, the only two options that we have are either topping or removing that tree. First picture you see right there in the upper left. When the tree is a little askew but still has its canopy going through the lines, that's a directional cut, which it has side pruning and some clearing out the shelf. That's what we call side pruning directional cut. The lower left is another side prune, one side trim, and that's where we're almost taking half of the canopy away. That is not recommended in the tree care industry. If you take more than 25% of a tree, you're putting that tree at risk, at health. And that's where we ask for removal if we're going to do that. However, ask the individual landowner. And if the landowner does not want that and they want to trim it, we're trying to be good neighbors here. We're not just trying to be the big bad wolf of we're taking your trees, get them away from the lines. I'm a less is more forester. There's some foresters that are more is better. I'd like to trim a tree and see how it responds. We have a great microclimate here, and it's really interesting. We have 2 grow cycles, actually, in the Hudson Valley area. You have your normal spring cycle, and then in August, you have another leaf out, push out cycle, which gives us a unique situation where our trees grow a little bit more than most. And so we usually have to get a little bit more. So when I go in and do that lower left-hand cut, it makes me really nervous. So I just don't like doing that cut at all. And I don't like topping trees. It's not an acceptable arboricultural care. But with a utility prune, sometimes, hey, I'd rather keep my tree than lose it all. I still have it as a screen. And with our microclimate that we have here, it's really interesting how some trees that I didn't think would survive have actually survived. Namely, a lot of evergreen species that we trim. And the last technique, if you see us do that technique, that means we're not doing our job. I don't believe in that technique at all. That's a see-through method where we cut a very minimum approach and you still have branches above the line, next to the line, underneath the line. That doesn't give you reliability. That gives you aesthetics. And I'm not a believer in that, so when I'm around, you're not going to see that. You're going to see one of the other 3 here. Or you're going to see the other one, which is complete removal, but we don't have that here. Here's some more examples of directional pruning. The 3 little dots represent the lines. You can see how you have side pruning up on the top, where the main canopy and the main stem is still there, but we're pruning off all the vegetation on one side and letting the lines go through. The Y pruning or V pruning, that's taking the vegetation out of the middle and trying to direct the tree to grow in different directions. Crown reduction right there, we don't get into the main stem, but we do reduce the top of the tree, the crown, down. That's another technique you'll see. And these are all, we've already explained the others, but these are all the techniques that you'll see out in the field when we're doing our normal maintenance program. And that's pretty much the program in a nutshell. And I'm going to talk a little bit more real quick, and then I'll get to the questions here. When we go out on our, before we do any trimming, our contractor is required to notify the individual landowner of what they're going to do on their property with their trees. Once that notification is done or that attempt is made, the tree crews go out and do their work. Sometimes landowners, homeowners feel that they want to talk about it a little bit more, and that's fine. The tree contractor would come to me saying, hey, the homeowner here doesn't, or landowner here doesn't necessarily want our full specification of 10, 15, 10. And that's where I come out and I talk to them and explain our program a little bit more in depth. More than happy to do that with anyone. And I think I've said that to y'all many times. More than happy to meet anyone and talk about trees. It's kind of why I got into the business. I used to put them in the ground, now I take them out. So I still like working with them. But that's our basically our notification process. And then if you have any questions, go ahead, fire away.
I just want to say one thing real quick. We saw how they cut back the trees. So one of the things that you have to realize too is that in the last couple of storms, some of the trees that came down were huge trees across the street from the wires, ones that would never be in the realm of NYSEG cutting down. And you know, so those last couple storms have been sort of really out there as far as, you know, so much rain, tornadoes coming through, hopefully not the new norm.
Hopefully.
But that's why, you know, one of the things that I did want to stress is that a lot of the trees were huge trees across the street that the day before you'd be driving down the street, you never even would have thought of that tree as possibly being a problem.
Actually, on Warren Street, perfect example, on Warren Street in particular, our crews were trimming before the tornadoes, before the big wind event.
Yep.
And then the general foreman was driving with one of his permission men after it hit. Literally 10 minutes after it hit, it went from beautiful road, we're trimming, we're doing our job, no problem, to we can't drive through, the trees are blocking it. Guys were jumping underneath their trucks because trees were falling down.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing what one little 15-minute storm can do.
Microburst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sam, I think one of the questions you're going to get is, what do I do as a homeowner when I'm driving down the road and I see a tree? Now let me just say this, your knowledge of the road, you have a large territory, not just Somers, obviously. You have been impressive in your encyclopedic, I would say, in your knowledge.
It's a blessing and a curse, actually.
Of the roads around here. One day I was asking you about two particular trees on Tomahawk Road, and you knew exactly what I was talking about.
And they still need to get to them. Yeah.
So what happens when someone, just go through that, someone's driving down the road or they're walking down the street, I'm walking my dog, and I see a tree that doesn't look too good. It might be on the same side as the wires. Maybe it's farther back from the wires, or maybe it's the other side of the street from the wires. Three different scenarios. This is what most people then become concerned about. What do I do? Who do I call? And you've been very generous in giving out your number.
I'll do that
Not
again.
your personal
I'll
one.
do that again.
Only Tom Chiaverini.
Well, first and foremost, let me touch on what Mr. Brinkbride said earlier. If someone's driving down the road, first pull over before you touch your phone and call NYSEG. The 1-800 number is still the same one for calling for storms that was given out. That's the same number you call if you have any tree-related question, whether any three of those scenarios. Your first step is call the 1-800 number, 1-800-572-1111. And they'll ask you, what can I help you with? I see a tree, there's a tree here. That then creates a notification. In fact, daily, I check to see if any notifications are in my division. And once I get those notifications, I go out personally and I look at them. And if it's within our purview, we'll address the tree. If it's not, I will tell them why and what they can do, if there's any options, and just kind of explain the program. And or another aspect, if you have tree questions related to Brewster Division, more specifically Somers, you can call my office line. It's 585-484-2229. So that's one way to go about doing it. And to touch on that, a gentleman called today on Wilner Street, and he was very concerned about his neighbor's tree. And he had a good right to be concerned, because I got there and I did the, oh my goodness, let me move my truck quick. The tree was uprooted, laying in another tree, and this was in a residential neighborhood. Tree was uprooted, laying in another tree, and it was a little windy, and I heard creaking and cracking, and didn't make me feel good. And the gentleman said, this has been going on for 5 days now, and I just thought I should call. Let me put that out there. Call immediately. Don't wait the 5 days to think someone else is going to call. If you see something that doesn't look good, by all means, call. And we actually had, as soon as I saw it, I called my crews and said, we will get this right now. Because that would have definitely broken some poles. It was a big size tree. It was probably about an 80-foot size tall oak that was uprooted, and it would have broken some poles. Yes, sir.
Can you make a few remarks about vines? You know, in the middle of the summer, they grow aggressively and they find their way up the poles within weeks. So how do we
Days.
handle that? Days. Okay.
I would even say days during the hot summers. What we do during our normal maintenance cycle is we cut the vines at the base of the pole and try to get a 5-foot circle. That is all that the vegetation department can do. They are not allowed to remove the vines from the facilities, because if you start yanking on a vine, you might create an outage. And that's one thing we don't want to do. Also, you're yanking on a vine that may be in contact with an electric line. You don't want to do that. That's touching, that's bad stuff. Could happen. And we always want to think worst case scenario. We would like to treat those vines with an herbicide, and there has to be an education for that. I think a lot of people are a little uneasy about herbicide use in residential areas for just, you know, concerns about a pesticide, herbicide going down on their property. Used correctly, that inhibits vines, but down here with our growing cycle that I explained earlier, we do have 2 growing cycles, and the amount of invasive species of vines, it's extremely difficult to control them. But once the vines are cut, we give those to the line department, and at the line department's convenience, they can go out and manage the vines and try to get them off the facilities.
Would you advise a homeowner not to cut the vine at the base?
I would advise the homeowner not to cut the vines at the base if it's in the facilities. If it gets to the phone and cable line, as you saw in that diagram, those are the first lines on the pole. If it gets within a foot of those, don't cut it. If it's below that, sure, go ahead. I don't like to. I myself, I have a fiberglass pole, but I am not authorized to cut vines either. I don't do it. If it's in the wires, I won't do it. Once in a while, I will get my fiberglass pole and I will make sure I'm with someone who's with me, because it's just a safety issue. We want to make sure we do that and get the correct people with the correct training to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
When you say fiberglass pole,
You have to come up to the mic, so.
You know, we need, just
Or
need-
repeat the question.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you ask again? I'm sorry. No, just say yeah. I'll ask.
is it a saw you're talking about when you say a fiberglass pole?
No, it's a fiberglass pole, and a saw head or a head can clip to it. Sometimes it's hydraulic or electric, but it's usually just a pole. Yeah. Oh, right. And we do have some handouts over here that kind of explains the vegetation program, kind of just what we went through. And it does, I think on one of them does have even the diagram of the poles and the facilities over there. There's also handouts, the rest of it. And generation safety, and what else is used? And for storm safety. There's some handouts at the top of the table. Anyone else have any questions? You got a question?
Yeah, so when you had the 4 examples of the cutting of trees, you said
You want to come up here, though?
Yeah, you gotta come up and say it
come
into
on
the
up
mic, my
here.
friend.
There you go.
Your name?
Joseph Dwyer. So when you had the 4 trees and cutting them, for like the different examples of cutting them, you said for the bottom right one, that's like not doing the job because it was too close to the wires. And for the one on the bottom left, you're cutting too much of the tree. And you just said for the top left one, you didn't like it. So for cutting the trees, is the only one you would want to do would be the top right one?
No. That's a good question, though. I was observant. I appreciate that. Keep me on my toes. What I'm saying is the best cut from a utility standpoint would be the one that gives the best clearance. And I should have been more clear with that. So thank you. All of those could give you the good clearance, but the best cut for a tree that's within 10 feet of the line is to remove the tree.
All right, thank
to
you.
get it away. You're welcome.
Good question.
Good question.
Thank
Good
Great
job.
question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't need a mic. I work the highways. I spent $3 million with FEMA money after Hurricane Sandy. In answer to your question, in FDR Park, there were 200 trucks from throughout the country in FDR Park, from Louisiana Missouri, Illinois, all over the place. They generally start 5 to 7 days ahead of time. You can see convoys of trucks, the utility trucks coming. I moved into Heritage Hills last March, and immediately before my closing, there was like 7 or 8 days of no power there. I was in charge of the State Highways Northern Westchester for my last 16 years before I retired. My name was on the permits with NYSEG, et cetera. NYSEG crews would report to my yards to, after the hurricanes, Irene and Sandy, back to Hurricane Floyd, et cetera. I have a very personal interest in serving on the task force. Heritage Hills has electric heat. We need the heat. We need the electricity. The other thing is, trees fall, and unfortunately, they cause fatalities. All right, years ago, I was cutting trees in a particular town, and because of political pressure, I was forced to stop. Unfortunately, shortly after that, on a town road, a young high school lady, unfortunately, was no longer with us because of a falling tree. The state Attorney General's office uses me as an expert witness, unpaid, calls me in by subpoena. The thing is, the more difficult we make it for the crews to cut the dangerous trees, the more expensive it becomes and the fewer trees that they can take down. The fewer trees they take down means more branches, more trees are going to fall, which then causes more outages. Now, a lot of the examples that Sam put up there, as soon as the utility companies or the state comes through and does cuts like that, the public calls up and complains. And due to political pressure, then the people have to go back and do handwork, which is extremely expensive, and they can't get to other trees, so it reduces their efficiency, which then increases the number of outages. So one of my primary objectives, aside from saving lives and keeping the heat, is just trying to make it politically understood that we have to understand that, of course, trees are beautiful. And I come up out of Riverdale from the Bronx, the Fieldston Road section, and I love trees. But during the snowstorms, when the trees came down and had to pull 3 plows off the road, off 684, to send a patrol truck out with a payloader and saws, and the roads aren't getting plowed because that tree that should have come down during the summertime during controlled conditions, as opposed to during a snowstorm when it's extremely dangerous, it's, you know, we can have the proper vegetation management, like Sam was presenting, the landscaping, the proper type of tree, so the shorter trees are underneath the wires. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I think, yeah, I think, well, you can come up. I think, you know, what we've done tonight with the vegetation management piece of your presentation is really educated people who are watching and the scouts that are here tonight. The town of Somers is an example. We had a beautiful tree growing right out in front of our townhouse here that was growing up into the wires. And according to Sam's protocol, it came down. That's what had to happen. So we did that. We had trees right along the power lines here near the townhouse. And you see we're doing work out there because now that's all cleared out, those trees had to go as well. So, Tom, you have a question?
Tom Newman, 170 Tomahawk Street. So living on Tomahawk Street, Route 118, in most of the storms, we tend to have a lot of trouble on that street. We get a lot of big trees that come down across the road, as you probably know. I was excited 3 or 4 months ago to see lots of crews out full force down Tomahawk, and they did the type of trimming that you've described. It occurs to me that the problems that we see in reality during the storms wouldn't be solved by the type of pruning that was done. So if you were to drive down 118, Mr. Clinchy talked about a couple of those 2 trees across from the preserve. There's that big evergreen across from Cagle Park that's gonna take out those wires someday. So is there something we can do? And I assume you can't because you don't have the authority to maybe take down some of those trees, but is there a way we can take this a step further? What can we do to identify those trees, and your expertise may be able to identify those, get the permissions to take those down if we don't have it by right of way? Because, again, we see the reality of the types of trees that fall. I drive a few mile stretch of that road every day, and I can point out the ones that will probably be a problem and it doesn't appear that anyone would object to them being gone. That some of those homeowners might actually want that dead tree gone. And I could be totally wrong on that. But what can we do I don't want to give up at that point. What can we do to take that to the next level? Maybe there's a conversation, maybe the town can help and get more permissions to get more of those trees down that I think we all know will one day be a problem.
Tom, we're actually already working on that. And our town highway department is getting ready to go out to bid. We set aside $100,000 right now for that exact purpose, because we know that Sam can only do so much. And that's what I was saying. We have those big trees that you go down and you say, that one's a little suspect, but it's not within 10 feet or 15 feet or anywhere near the wires. So our highway department is looking into that. Again, some of Sam's advice has been, when we do it, get a certified tree guy or tree arborist. Sorry. Line certified. That was it. To make sure that we're doing the right thing. But the town is trying to be proactive there. In last year's budget, we added we set aside $100,000 to start the process, and the highway department's going to go out and start putting that out to bid now. So hopefully we'll be able to do some of those things in 2019.
Those problem trees that people say.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do. It's not so much a complaint.
Although I've just been corrected, as I often am. 118 is a state road also, so that we wouldn't be. Yeah, we wouldn't be doing that. But the town roads is what we would be working on.
Sam,
let me respond to that real quick.
The mic, Sam.
There is one thing I did not say about our routine maintenance schedule. I am required to go out and look at every bit of the work. And your street in particular, there's still some more work to be done. Absolutely. There's, as I count it today, 6 trees that I want down. And 2 of them are the ones you brought up. So yes, they're going to get there. But if it's outside that 10, not too much I can do. Also, this is where I'm going to say they're your neighbors. Do a neighborly thing. Maybe have a conversation with your neighbors saying, hey, this doesn't just affect you. This affects everyone here. I really can't do that. I can only do what I'm legally allowed by my company to do. And we do have a process if someone does refuse or have a problem. We do have a process called the refusal process that I go on. We look up the easements associated with that property, and then we have another discussion with them. And that's a case-by-case basis.
So, Sam, you have the authority to act within the right-of-way, correct?
Depending on how big the right-of-way is.
You have the authority to act within 10 to 15 feet of the wire.
And that's your company policy?
It's a policy that's been approved by the Public Service Commission.
All right.
That's our program that we laid out has been approved by the Public Service Commission with those distances. And when we do have people that have concerns, landowners that have concerns about the work, that's where a different process occurs called the refusal process.
Sure.
And that's how it's a case-by-case basis.
So even if it's outside that, if we were to do this as a town, we really don't have the authority to do that if it's outside our right-of-way.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to you.
We would have to get permission from the homeowner to act, even though we see something threatening.
If it's a hazard to the roadway, it's not a matter of authority, it's a matter of duty. The state has a
Mike, that does, okay.
So Sam,
all right, thank you.
I thought we were done, sorry.
And Sam, just in answer to Mr. Newman's question, so as you go through this 5-year trimming cycle, so you're going down, you sign, here, Nelson, go out, look at this, look at that, you go out and look. I just wanted to make sure I understood the point. As you trim, are there things that sort of like, that's just a bad tree and it's dangerous, but we can't trim it right now? It comes out outside of the parameters of the trimming policy, but it is a potential problem. So that does exist. Would it in any way be for you then to say that we work more in conjunction that, hey, here's a tree, notify the town, you know, we know? Is that a helpful policy?
The town highway superintendent, Tom Cheverini, and I actually have a really good working relationship, and we do bounce a lot of trees off each other.
So he would have that information.
If I saw one on town property that I didn't like and I couldn't get, yeah, I'd do that courtesy and give Tom a call or any highway
What if it's on
superintendent.
private property? Do you keep a listing of that? Problem tree on property A.
I wouldn't talk to you about private property. I would talk to that individual landowner and show the respect to
that's
that.
my question.
Yeah, I would show the respect to every individual landowner. That what the conversation happens between NYSEG and that landowner is between them, and if they would like to share it, that's up to them.
That's really.
But
my
I'm trying to
question.
be very, very respectful of that. So.
It's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay.
And thank
Any
you,
other
Aziz.
questions? Oh, go ahead. Oh, gotta come on. Come on here. I'll give you the mic.
You can.
Right.
Who
Actually bears the cost of
Carol,
removing
your
the-
name and address?
Carol Rife, Peekskill, New York, but I don't even live. Anyway, if there's a tree on private property and it is in danger of taking down lines, and that you get with the homeowner and they agree, who bears the cost of removing the tree, which we know can run into thousands and thousands of dollars? It's not that you're telling the homeowner, you must take this tree down, it's gonna cost you $5,000.
The homeowner.
Well, that's actually a good question. If it falls within our purview, that's why we have our tree companies out there. We would sign it up for removal, and we would go through our removal process. If it's outside of our purview, that's where I would let them know that they would have to hire their own tree contractor to do that work. If it's within 10 feet of the lines. That would have to be the individual landowner's responsibility. Yes, absolutely. Daily battle.
Here's what happens at our meetings.
And I think
We're
I've
supposed to be
taken up
done,
your
and,
time.
we
Yes,
can talk
indeed.
about trees for about another 3 hours, probably. So I will say thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, or Sam. Thank you, Aziz. Appreciate all you've been doing.
Thanks to
Again,
Rob.
Thanks for having
Gotta
us.
leave.
We appreciate it.
And Rob,
Thank
when
you
he's
for
here.
coming.
Why don't we take 5 minutes so they can get their stuff?
I think the scouts would want to
Rick?
go home.
Want to take 5 minutes so they can clean up?
Yeah,
We've
I
had
just,
enough of this.
just want to say a word. So going back to last year and the fact that the town of Somers filed a formal complaint with the Public Service Commission. We filed that complaint not because of trees falling or cars hitting poles, losing outages. We made that complaint because we felt that the infrastructure in the NYSEG system serving the town of Somers was not being maintained or upgraded. So their number of outages were substation fires, breakers malfunctioning. So our initial complaint to the Public Service Commission really had nothing to do with vegetation management. It had everything to do with NYSEG not, in our opinion, not doing the job over the last 10 to 15 years. What we are seeing now, and what Rob was speaking about, is a recommitment to fixing the infrastructure here. So, knock on wood as we all do here tonight, but with any luck with these reclosers, you're seeing a lot of poles being replaced. We're getting attention. But this attention is 10 years past due.
Right.
So with that, I know the scouts, hopefully you've had your civic lesson for tonight. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Somers, we're back from our break, and I think the scouts got quite the education tonight.
The ones that stayed awake.
They all did. Okay, number 2 under Town Board agenda this evening, I will make a motion to authorize the supervisor to execute the ESI Group Employee Assistance Program Renewal Contract in the amount of $3,100, effective January 1st, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. And then number 3 is our salt processing shed with the DASNY SAM grants. I'd like to declare the town board as the lead agency. We review the EAF parts 1, 2, and 3. We wanted determination and vote of a negative declaration under seeker, and authorize the supervisor to sign a short environmental form part 3. To authorize to have the supervisor sign the following completed documents: project information sheet, project certification. Authorized to have the supervisor and deputy supervisor sign the following completed documents: the grantee certification, grantee questionnaire, and then authorize the supervisor to sign the cover letter and submit the entire grant application to DASME grant administrator. So I'd like to make a motion to take those actions A, C, D, E, and F.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then we received a letter of appreciation from the VA Hudson Valley Healthcare System at Montrose campus. Patients and staff for the town's generous donation of clothing received on November 15th. So we have a collection of clothing, and they graciously thanked us for that donation. Okay, under personnel, current vacancies are listed. These are on our website as well. Upcoming vacancies expiring. Actually, we have 2. Okay. 2 for the Parks and Rec Board. One we just filled. He's going to serve an unexpired term. So, and then authorize the reappointment of Victor Canistra to the Somers Zoning Board of Appeals to a 5-year term ending December 31st. I think what I'll do is we'll go through these. Okay, acknowledge, yeah, I guess we have to go through them individually.
Well, 3, 5, and 6 you put together before, and 7 are just acknowledging.
Right.
Yeah, we discussed these last time.
Yeah,
Just
okay,
move each
well,
one
we
individually.
didn't,
Yeah, just move them each individually.
yeah, well, acknowledge resignation of Teresa M. Delaney as assessment clerk in the assessor's office effective December 31st, 2018. Teresa unfortunately had some health issues in her family that required her full attention, and as you know, we kept her on family medical leave up until the last day of the year, and she's decided to resign.
She wasn't with us, with the town for that long, but by all reports, she was really good at her job, and obviously wish her best luck because of the circumstances. But she was valuable.
True, true. And the other, I want to acknowledge the resignation of Miss Susan J. Greenman, Senior Library Clerk for the Somers Library, effective September 29th.
A little delayed.
Yeah, it was. She's probably down in Florida already. All right, now I'll make a motion to move number 3, 5, and 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then we come to our consensus agenda. 1 through 7. Any issues, questions on any of those?
Nope.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consensus agenda, items 1 through 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, our next regular meeting will be February 7th here at the Townhouse. That'll be our work session. And following that, on February 14th, our regular meeting will be held on Valentine's Day, yes. And we'll have a continuation of public hearings on the zoning regulation, some of these zoning regulations and local law regarding property maintenance.
And our wives will all be mad at it. It's a given.
Okay, I have a few announcements. There's 3 of them. So on Saturday, this Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., the Somers Lions Club is holding a health expo and blood drive at the Somers High School. You're going to have vision screening, diabetes awareness, yoga, psychotherapist, physical therapist, massage therapy, acupuncture, healthy eating with samples, food care, phone for hearing impaired, drug crisis in our backyard. So it's all about health issues as well as a blood drive. We had our own blood drive here the other day, and I guess because of the weather, we only got about half as many donations as usual.
Or some people
So,
save
and
them
they're-
for the Lions blood drive too.
Yeah, so here's this second chance in a week to donate blood, and they are experiencing an emergency. So please give your consideration, get yourself over to the Health Expo and blood drive. This next topic, Town of Somers Emergency Preparedness and Fire Safety Presentation in conjunction with the American Red Cross. This is going to be held Saturday, January 19th at 10 a.m. at the Heritage Hills Activity Center. Then this is going to be all about preparing and dealing with emergencies and fire safety. So we heard tonight about what can happen, if trees aren't trimmed, you lose power. Last year we were 10 days in an emergency situation. This is a very important seminar which is open to all Somers residents.
They're giving free smoke detectors?
That I do not know.
They have had that program. I just pulled out the paper here, right, that Jack Mattis, who's on that Emergency Preparedness Committee, has sent us a note about that they are extending that out of Heritage Hills to those in town who want to look for a fire inspection and the free
The lithium battery.
right,
Yeah,
right.
so
It's a 10-year smoke detector.
Right, but at this training, they're not going to be handing out smoke
No,
detectors.
no.
You could
No, but information.
You could sign up
Right.
for them to do an inspection.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a great.
They do give us a phone number here. Maybe we can put that on our website too.
Sure.
Our new website.
Well, why don't you give it out, Richard?
You want that number?
Yeah.
845-673-1198. That's 845-673-1198.
And once again, that's the Red Cross.
That is the Red
You
Cross.
sign up for fire inspection and free
Right.
smoke
Yeah.
detectors. Very good.
It will say Red Cross will install a free 10-year lithium battery smoke alarm, test any smoke alarms you currently have, provide emergency preparedness tips, and demonstrate how to develop a family disaster plan.
Excellent. And finally, St. Luke's Food Pantry, open every Friday, 2:30 to 4 p.m. Donations may be dropped off in their office lobby during office hours, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, or brought to the church on Sundays at St. Luke's Church, 331 Route 100. So be generous with your food donations. Although Somers is a wonderful place to live, there are some residents that are struggling. So be generous with your food donations. All right, gentlemen, that does it for the business of the board.
There's just 2 things I wanted to mention, if I might.
By all means.
First, today, as Bill just said, today is the beginning of our brand new, long-awaited, much discussed, far too prolonged wait for our new website. And so it's the same address, somersny.com, but it's a new look, it's a new website, and it is much more compatible to cell phone, home computer, iPad. They change the format depending upon which device is used. And the real purpose of it is still to come, though, and that is, those of you who have maybe paid attention to this over the time, is that you'll be able to, right on your phone, fill out paperwork for many of the routine things that you do to apply for the town for various permits or anything like that. even the paying of some bills, and without having to come to the townhouse or to the building department or parks. And so we think it'll be much more user-friendly. One of the things it has, as a little aside, is that you can actually change the language on it. And so if you feel more comfortable in another language, it will automatically change the language on the website, along with a lot of other things. So we researched it. It's been about a year and a half in waiting to develop this. It's used by other towns and cities throughout the East. They have an office in New York City. And so we're excited. I think Tammy Savitt deserves a lot of credit. She's been the point person for the town, along with all of her other duties, has been implementing this and having, I don't know, a gazillion phone calls between her and Asher Rosenfeld and a couple of those guys who run this organization. And I think they are like on speed dial. They've done it so many times. But I would just like to say that, you know, she's been great. She's been our person, and I thank her for that.
Well, and I will thank you being on that IT committee with Bob Kehoe as well. You actually went down and visited them in their offices in the city when things...
I was hoping for lunch, but it didn't work.
Well, when things kind of stalled. So since your visit down there to now, we now have a new look, a new website, and encourage everybody to get out there and take a look at it.
It was more Tammy than me. The other thing I did want to mention, Mr. Supervisor, is that I did have the honor last Sunday of representing Somers at the inauguration of our new state senator, Peter Harcum. And I mention that because many times inaugurations, you know, they're nice, but it can be kind of dry. This was inspiring, I must say. It was packed auditorium over in Peekskill, and Republican and Democrat from all over the area that Senator Harcum serves. And the governor was there, the county executive, Peter Harcum himself. Peter spoke about the need to have more appropriate political dialogue. He said, when did trash talking become part of politics? We all here couldn't agree with him more. We try to take pride, I think, in how we conduct ourselves with respect, and even when we disagree, and I think we do that pretty well. The county executive was really inspiring, talking about the calling of politics and government to make things better for people. And while it sounds trite and sort of a cliche, I left there myself, and I know speaking with other people who serve in similar capacities, even though they're on the lowest level of government, to really go back and make sure we always do our best and fulfill that public trust that is given to us. So kudos to all of them for being there. It was a wonderful day. I know our state senator will be coming by to see us, and we'll be calling on him, I'm sure, for many things. So now that you've won, here's the part everybody's going to ask you for something.
Send money.
Yeah, right. But I think he'll do a good job, and he also extended thanks to Terrence Murphy for the service that he had, even as Peter replaces him. So it was a really fine day. I was very happy to represent Somers, and I left there inspired, I must say.
Very good. Thank you. Any other issues, concerns? No. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Good night, Somers.